Things turn out best for people who make the best of the way things turn out. That is a quote by John Wooden.
Welcome to Trina Talk. Trina Talk is a weekly podcast that will inspire and empower women of all ages to strive for the impossible. Your host, Trina L. Martin from TrinaMartin.com, is a motivational speaker, leader, and cyber tech expert. Every week, Trina will share wisdom gained from her life experiences and lessons learned while pursuing her goals to inspire you to achieve the next level in your life. Now, your host, Trina L. Martin.
Hello, welcome to Trina Talk. I am your host, Trina L. Martin, and this is episode 39. The topic this week is Change the Way You Look at Things. My guest this week is Tim C. Starr. Tim is a speaker, author, podcaster, and mindset missionary. Tim worked in the computer support industry for more than 20 years. Then in early February 2013, after 15 years working for the New York Life Insurance Company general office in San Diego, he got a phone call telling him that was his last day. Tim didn't work again for almost 2 years, but he didn't get depressed. He felt freed and relieved. Hi, Tim. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Trina.
So you're a podcaster as well. You're an author, a public speaker. You're from Chicago, just as I am. But you have an interesting story as far as your life before your podcast and everything. Can you go into detail and tell me about that?
Sure. I've been doing IT work for 20 plus years. And for really the whole time, except for a short period here recently. For that whole period, I've been working as a contractor, which means that you're employed by one company, a staffing agency generally, and then you provide services for a third-party company. And I spent almost 15 years at the New York Life Insurance Company general office in San Diego, and I was the only in-house support person there. And as a contractor, normally, they have a contract that's negotiated between the company you work for and the company you're providing the services for. And every year, generally, it gets renegotiated. Sometimes it's a different time frame, but generally it's every year. So about 6 years ago, we were going through that process, and it was delayed. It was probably a month past when it was supposed to have been finalized. And my rep in New York had been telling me all along, don't worry, just like every other year, it's a done deal, nothing to worry about, you got a job, And then one day my phone rang in early February, and it was him, and he said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but they've taken everything off the table. They told me to tell you today's your last day. Go home. So, needless to say, it was unexpected. It was not out of character for them and how they do business, but I didn't expect it to happen. So I packed up all my stuff and I went home to a wife who was already unemployed. And so for a couple of months, that made things kind of interesting at home. But she went back to work, and I took a little time off because I really hadn't had a vacation in a long time, because when you're a contractor, if you don't go to work one day, you don't get paid for that day. There is no paid time off. Sick time, holidays, nothing. So you tend to just work. And so I hadn't had what I felt like was a real vacation in quite some time. So I decided I was just going to relax for a little while, not worry about it. And then I started looking for work. And it took me almost 2 years to find a job. And the whole job scene and search scene had changed, and it was much more difficult. And so what happened to me somewhere during that time frame, I realized that what the quote-unquote experts say is supposed to happen to a middle-aged man when he loses his job unexpectedly did not happen to me. And the commonly accepted rule is that you're going to get depressed. You're going to start questioning, what's your value in society if I'm not this anymore? Who am I? What am I? And, it's just a bunch of ugly stuff. And none of that happened to me. I was feeling pressure, and the longer the time went, the more pressure I felt about trying to find a job. But, and I didn't have any great amount of money to sit on. So, but I didn't get depressed, and I didn't feel like, I wasn't questioning, who am I now if I'm not this? And so when that became a conscious awareness for me, then I thought, well, okay, why not? Why don't I feel these things? And the answer was really simple. It came from the way I viewed life in general. And I just didn't see things the way, apparently, the typical American male sees things. And certainly not the way they said I was supposed to see things. And so then, okay, why not? And it really just came out of stuff that I had been consuming since I was a kid. My mother was a seeker for answers, all of her life. And when I was a teenager, she used to read all this stuff. And for the younger people out there, this is the way, but the internet was not even in anybody's imagination yet. So you had to go to the library to read a book, And she used to share a lot of these things with me. And so I got exposed to a lot of what we now call, thought leaders at a pretty early age. And I would read it because I thought the stuff was interesting. And I probably didn't have a lot of resistance to the ideas that they were presenting. If they said, whatever position you're in today, it's your own, I don't want to use the word fault, but it's your own responsibility. You got there through choices that you made and actions that you took. And, the flip side of that is it's the same for where you're going to be tomorrow. It's all dependent on you and what you decide to do. And I didn't take that and go, well, I don't like to hear what that is. I sort of chewed on it for its value. And if it made sense to me, I at some level incorporated it. And over time, that stuff changes your mind. And so when this big life event happened to me, I just didn't have the kind of reaction to it that I was, in quotes again, supposed to have. So from there, then I just started, I finished my first book while I was unemployed. And I just somewhere started thinking that, if I can learn these ideas and keep myself from grief, other people can do it. And I certainly know a lot of people who need to do it. And so I thought I'll start, let me see how I can spread this. And so that's sort of through a winding path has taken me to where I'm at today and doing podcasting and speaking and things along that line. And you and me.
Yeah. And that's very interesting because I do things just like you do. I'm, a podcaster, speaker. I'm in the process of writing my book. And I've done a lot of self-work myself. And I've kind of come to exactly what you were saying is it's a mindset thing.
Absolutely.
So my question for you is, you said, your mom basically you kind of were fed off of your mom, you're going to the library and reading books and things like that. Did you know that you were always that type of person, or did it take this circumstance for you to realize that, okay, I'm not going to be depressed and think that the world is coming to an end?
This stuff is just whatever your mindset is, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your age, it's a result of years and years and years of programming. And the way that I look at it is, an analogy is it's sort of like taking let's say a kitchen table, and it's just raw wood. It's untreated, it's brand new. And you put a layer of just a thin coat of shellac on it, right? And it's so thin, you can't even hardly see it. but you're starting to protect that table. And then every day you put another thin layer on there, another thin layer, another thin layer. Over time, it builds up to the point that, it's 3 feet thick and you can't see the table anymore. Right? So to counteract that, if you want to get rid of that shellac, you generally, and there's shortcuts for different things, but generally speaking, you got to start taking off those layers sort of one by one, and you start working back in the other direction. So it takes time. In my experience, people are not able to make tremendous changes in how they see the world overnight. So it's just a time process. It's an accumulative thing that, and that's my answer, I guess. It's the short answer is it's cumulative. It's not some instant thing that you realize and go, oh, I see the light now, and now suddenly I'm a different person.
Mm-hmm.
You've got lots of programs that are running, and they're not going to just stop running instantly. You have to counteract them.
Right. So when that situation happened to you, how did you get to the point of writing a book? Because you said, okay, you lost your job,
Mm-hmm.
you weren't depressed, but I would imagine just like any other family, like you said, your wife was out of work for a little bit, and I'm pretty sure there was some stress as far as home life.
Yep.
So how did you get past that and keep your sanity, help have your wife keep hers, and then you said, okay, because you were out of work for 2 years.
Yep.
So how did you finally everything smoothed out, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to take this time and write this book? How did you get there?
I've always enjoyed writing. It's work, but there are times when it's just fun to do. And I'd had this idea. So I had an idea that came to me, I don't even know when, it's years earlier. And, most ideas come and you think, oh, this is great. And then, you give it a day or two and it's not so shiny anymore. And this was an idea that just wouldn't go away. And so I had time on my hands. So I said, all right, let's see, and I started up the computer and started my word processor. And I just had just this little nugget of an idea, and I started writing, and I wrote the first, probably at least the first half, probably 2/3 of the book all in one sitting. It just kept coming. And then it stopped, and it took me then another 2 years to finish it, or something close to that. So people have told me, oh, well, you were channeling it. Maybe, I don't know. I do know that sometimes I go back and I look at pieces of the book, and certain parts of that section, I remember doing it, but it's kind of like it wasn't me. It's an interesting experience.
So what was your book about?
It's called My Name is Prosperity, and it's written in the first person. I go to a party on a big estate in Texas, and it just turns out that I end up there and I don't know anybody, and I meet a woman there who may or may not be a real person. And over the course of a long weekend, she has lessons to teach me, but she also introduces me to 3 other people who have their own lessons in different areas. And it's essentially their law of attraction lessons.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So you call yourself a mindset missionary.
Mm.
So tell me about that. And I think you've already touched on it, and I think I know where you're going to head. But
let's see if I can confound you. Well, you said it. It's all about mindset. I mean, and I have this thing about when we speak, people say a lot of things and leave off the tail end of really what they're saying, right? So a phrase like, or sentence like, it's all about mindset. You need to have a better mindset. What's left off of there is if you want to be happy. right? Or if you want to do this, if you want to do that. It's sort of assumed that the person on the other side knows what we're saying. But I think for the most part, people don't truly know. And my belief is that what we all really only want out of life is to be just blissfully happy. And if we were the village idiot just walking around with a giant grin on our faces all day long and the world was falling apart around us, but we didn't care, we'd be happy. And it wouldn't matter. Everything else doesn't matter. And the thing is, we don't generally tend to think that far into this idea. And people argue with me on whether or not, I'm going down the right road, and that's okay. But I believe that every decision that we make and every action that we take is really based on, at some level, an expectation that's going to make us happier. And the logic behind the decision may or may not be any good. Mm-hmm. But it's still the reason that it's the reason we jump. It's the reason you jump into the pool on a hot summer day. Mm-hmm. It feels good. It makes you happy. And it's why you listen to music. It's also the reason why people walk into traffic. They think they're going to be happier by getting run over. It's poor logic, right? At least according to the rest of us. But it doesn't change the reason that they do it. They think it's going to be better.
Wow.
I don't know if that answers things for you or not.
No, it does.
But the mindset part, is just about, if you want to be happier than you are today, and that's, I think that's all we want really is to be happier today than we were yesterday, and to be a little happier tomorrow than we are today. And ultimately, we just build on that, and you just want to be happier and happier and happier. But it takes effort. It takes a little work. It takes some awareness of what's going through your head. You have to monitor your thoughts. You have to be proactive about the stuff you take in. I rant about turning off the TV news. Turn it off. It is doing nothing but killing you. And if there's anything important that happens in the world, you're going to hear about it, guaranteed. So, but if you want to be happier, you got to stop consuming all the junk that is shocking and ugly and makes you feel bad. It's that simple.
Oh my God. It's I do the exact same thing. I probably about a couple of years ago, I stopped watching the news because I used to be a news junkie. So it used to be on all the time. And I just started being stressed, having anxiety. And then one day I was at my wit's end, and my kids, because I'm a single mother, my kids had gone with their father. And I said, you know what, this weekend I'm so exhausted. I'm not going to look at TV. I'm not going to answer the phone. And that was like, it was like an epiphany to me. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I had so much peace and clarity for that weekend. And Monday morning I got up and I turned on the news and I felt myself tighten right back up again.
Yep.
So when you said don't turn on the news, stop watching the news, I'm going, yes.
That's far and away, in my opinion, that is far and away the biggest problem that we have in this society, is that because this is such a huge conversation. What happens when you watch the news is they put up these stories that are shocking, and you get this little jolt in your system, and it doesn't feel good, but it's the same family of chemicals that come when you have the fight or flight mechanism that kicks in, that we have brought with us since we were first evolved into humans and earlier, right? Do you know who Joe Dispenza is?
No, I don't.
Dr. Joe Dispenza. Okay. He was in, I think, The Secret, either that or What the Bleep Do We Know? But okay. He's got some fascinating stuff. He's really sort of science-based around the law of attraction things. But he talks really well about this idea that the example he gives is, there's a zebra that gets attacked by a lion, excuse me, and the lion like tears one of the zebra's legs off, but the zebra gets away. Right? And so obviously it had the fight or flight mechanism kicked in when it was attacked. But 20 minutes later, it's out there grazing normally with the rest of the zebras. Right? Humans don't do that. The zebra they don't have the conscious mechanisms that keep replaying what just happened. We keep reliving it. And so what happens to us is we keep getting those hormones that are injected into your system when that stuff happens, and they come in an instant. That stuff keeps getting put right back into our bloodstream. And over time, these hormones degrade your organs. They destroy your body physically. And so when you're watching, as an example, the TV news, and you have not only the audio, the story that they're telling you, but they're showing it to you. Right? And they're building up how terrible it is. So you get this, oh my God, how terrible is that? This happened to these people, right? And you start sort of reliving that, even though it didn't even happen to you. And you get these hormones into your system. Well, your system gets addicted to it. And so you keep seeking it out then. And so you are now addicted to something that is literally killing you, literally. And nobody tells us this, right? And the news doesn't play. There have been people have tried to do like internet-based TV channel kind of things where it's nothing but good news, right? And it's great intentions, but nobody watches. Mm-hmm. They fail every single time because there's no jolt from it. You can go and watch the kitten videos on the internet are huge because you get a little bit of you get that warm and fuzzy. Mm-hmm. But for generally speaking good news, it really doesn't trigger that stuff. You don't get the emotions going. And so it's much easier to trigger people's fear and pain. And that's what keeps people coming back, and that's what pays the bills. And so that's why they do it.
I totally agree.
So you want to break free, you gotta do it. You gotta understand what you're doing to yourself and consciously just pay attention to what you're consuming. Mm-hmm. And then that extends out to who are the people you hang around with? Who do you talk to? What are the conversations you have with the people at work, with your family? You got that uncle that just can't quit complaining about, my mother lived and died thinking she was a victim of the world. And it was really tough, but I'll go on like this forever. But a big piece of this is that, one of the reasons that I think more people don't go down this path is that when you start getting this information, one of the lessons that you hear is that you're the one responsible. This didn't happen to you. Mm-hmm. You created it somehow. Mm-hmm. Right? You set yourself up to be in this position. And so if you accept that you created the situation or the position where you're at, then you also have to accept that whatever the results are going to be and wherever you're going to be, that's on you too. Mm-hmm. So now there's some responsibility in your life that you didn't have a minute ago. Oh. Generally, with responsibility, we expect to get blame and guilt and shame, right? And nobody wants that. Mm-hmm. And so we don't want to accept responsibility because it's got these friends that come along with it. And the good news is that when you're doing this sort of self-work stuff, those guys don't have to come to the party. Mm-hmm. But you do have to accept that you got yourself where you're at and that it's going to be up to you to change it. But it doesn't have to be, I tell people, if you're feeling pain about something in your life right now, you're already paying the price for the decision that you made. That you've already done your time. Just saying, this is on me, doesn't mean that, well, now you got to start paying the penalty. You've already paid it. You're already in pain. So it's time now to drop it where it is and turn around and walk the other way. Start working on and going in a different direction.
I love everything you're saying, and I know you kept saying, "Oh, I can go on forever with it." I'm right there with you because I have done that hard self work, and I know everything that you're saying is true. because I have family members that, like you were saying, my mother was one of those too that, was a victim of the world. Everything was done to her. And like you said, there's people, and I've had to let go of friends. I've stopped talking to family members because, like you say, they're draining. I have talked to people on the phone, and then when I get off the phone, I feel like a bus has run over me.
Yep.
I'm
my mother.
Yeah, I'm so just, I'm going, oh my goodness, I was having a good day until this person called me. Now, now I feel like I just, like you said, I felt like I went and played in the middle of the street and a bus just ran over me.
Yep.
And finally I realized, I can't do this anymore. I cannot talk to this person anymore because they're always complaining. There's something negative, and I don't want that feeding into my world.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because before cell phones, it used to be expensive to make a long distance call.
Mm-hmm. I remember those days.
And I moved out of the house. I was 17 years old. I was still a senior in high school. And my mother, that following summer, she moved to Arizona. And so our only communication was on the phone, probably once a month. And the phone call would be exactly what you just described. It would be just her complaining about all this stuff in her life, and I would end the call and just be wiped, just completely wiped out. And one day I became conscious of this, and she started in and I said, Mom, you can't do this to me. She had no idea what I was talking about. So you can't just call me and dump this stuff on me. And what are you doing about it? And that was a question she didn't like. And she didn't like that, I wasn't willing anymore to listen to just the constant complaints. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing, to vent. It's another thing to just be complaining. And that complaining is a habit. And I told her, you can't do this to me anymore. And we hung up, and I didn't hear from her again for probably 6 months.
Wow.
But you know what? It was a free and easy 6 months. And then when she called, then she was better for a while. It's a program. She lapsed back into it, but I could call her on it then after that. Say, no, you can't, no, you got to talk about something else. You can't talk about this, and essentially I took over the phone calls. I started driving the bus,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what you have to do. You got to point it out to people, and some people are going to be okay with it and own it, and other people are going to deny it, and you may wave goodbye to them in your life. It's just a reality, but your life will be better for it. It's very unlikely that they are major contributors to your happiness and at the same time just be complaining about everything. Pretty unlikely.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I've let go people, and my mother was like that, and she's now deceased, but I have a brother and he's like that. And honestly, I stopped answering his calls because it was always some kind of negativity. And the crazy thing is, so I have two brothers. My eldest brother, he and I are very close, very much alike, always have been. And this brother that I'm talking about now is my brother next to me, who was a lot like my mom. So last year, my eldest brother turned 60. His wife throws him a surprise birthday party. I fly out there as a surprise. My other brother shows up. And would you not know it? I haven't seen him in years. And the first thing out of his mouth was something he was complaining about. And I was, and if, he went on and I guess he saw that the disinterest in my face, and finally he said, well, what do you think about that? Or should I just let it go? I said, just let it go. Mm-hmm. And then like you, I said, I'm going to drive this train. So I turned it on something else like, hey, the weather's great. Or just something that wasn't complaining. And I was just going, oh my, and I'm thinking, okay, we're here to celebrate my other brother, and he's making this all about him. And finally, I just had the party. I just had to leave him. And then my other brother tells me, as we're talking about it, he goes, yeah, he went to other people at the party and started complaining about the same.
Absolutely.
I'm going, what?
We need to have a long conversation off the record. Or I mean, that was what my mother would do her whole life. She would find somebody who would listen to her complaints, and that's, she would just dump on them all the time. And then eventually that person would get tired of it, and then she would suddenly, they're the enemy, they're the bad guy now, and she would find somebody else to listen. And some poor unfortunate individual who doesn't know any different starts listening, and next thing you know, they're sucked in and can't get away for a while. But she would go from one person to the next, and it was sad.
Yeah.
She volunteered to me one day that she had been rear-ended in a car 6 or 7 times. And I thought, well, that's probably not other people's fault.
Mm.
There's a pattern here. What's the common denominator? It's got to be something about your driving.
Wow.
So, it's one of the great things, though, to slightly change this, is for anybody who hears this, who thinks, some of this, strikes a chord, and maybe I should look into this a little bit, but I don't feel like feeling bad about myself or my life or anything like that. One of the things that I like to remind people about, or tell them, is that, when you start to dig into this stuff, as soon as you start to make a little change, in the beginning especially, you see change in your life, right? You see positive things happen immediately. And so you're able to get excited about it, and you want to dig in and get more. And it's a really fun place to be at, when these lights start to come on for you, and you go, this stuff doesn't have to bother me anymore. I'm annoyed like crazy at the little things in life that shouldn't be happening, right? Somebody has decided not to do their job, and so somebody else has to do it for them, right? That stuff makes me crazy. But the big stuff happens. I'm able to just accept it and deal with it and move on. And I am so grateful for that, because you save yourself just so much grief and anxiety, and you don't grow old so fast,
That's true. Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit, because we can go on to this, but I see that you mentor youth. Tell me about that, because that's something that I like to do as well.
It's honestly, it's not something I have a lot of experience with, but the best story I have about it, and really what kind of sent me down the road in wanting to do it, is while I was unemployed, and after I decided, I need to create some sort of a speaking career, I found an opportunity to do a couple of presentations at a school for what do they call it? Just challenged kids with they got family problems, they got their gang members and that kind of thing. And so they put me into a classroom, and it was a mix of kids and parents. The second presentation actually had a parole officer standing there. And these guys, it was a mix of kids that were basically good kids, and some that were just, they just were not going anywhere. A couple of them came in, sat down in the back, pulled their hoods, their sweatshirts, down over their faces, and just went to sleep. But so I started talking, and I honestly don't remember really what I was talking about. It kind of morphed as I was going. But we got into the idea of, thoughts creating your life. And I brought up Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. And nobody in the room had ever heard of him, of course. And so I was talking about that. And there was a kid right in front of me. I still remember his face. You see the eyes go up, and the head kind of tilts back, and you can see that he's thinking about something. And he gets this little smile comes on his face, and and I was approached afterwards by another kid, and one of the parents and stuff wanted to know more. And so I left that just feeling, I want to do more of that, because this sounds hokey. It sounds cliche, but that's how you change the world. It's nobody there is necessarily, because of what I said, nobody there is going to go out and be the next Steve Jobs or anything else. But you plant a seed, and with a little bit of luck, they think it's interesting, and they go look for, where else can I find more of these seeds, and the world changes a little bit. And I'm the way I'm wired. I'm happy with that. I don't need to be. I don't need to be some big titan of industry or something, or some big, leader of a crusade. I'm happy to be contributing and feel like I've played a part, and it doesn't matter so much whether I get credit for anything or not. So that's kind of that was the genesis, and so I'm part of a project right now where there's a woman here in San Diego who put this together, where a bunch of people wrote. It's called Letters to Me, and it's a letter to yourself that you wish you would have received. It's advice you wish you would have received from somebody else when you were young. And so that book has been published, and now we're beginning a sort of a speaking tour for schools in the area and libraries and things, to go out and just sort of spread the ideas and give younger people something new to think about. Because generally speaking, everybody's getting the same crap that we took in when we were kids. Nothing much has changed. So, wow. But it just takes people going out and doing a little here and there.
Right. Excellent. Tell me about your podcast.
Okay. Well, I'm about to launch a new one, but that hasn't started yet. So we'll talk about the previous one.
Okay.
I am a believer that nothing in this world, this is another huge conversation, but nothing in this world is truly physical. Right? If you take an electron microscope and you start drilling down into cells and atoms and what's in the atom and what's in the proton and what's in this and there are particles after particles after particles, and everything is smaller and smaller and smaller and farther apart and moving faster and faster. We've got I was astounded. I found out fairly recently that scientists have never seen an electron. They can prove that they exist, right? They have evidence of what happens after, I guess. And these things all these tests that they're doing, the super collider, the hadron, whatever, all these things, these quarks, all this stuff that they've never seen any of this stuff. All they can see is the evidence based on the tests they created. And the more they investigate, the more they find out there's all the stuff we don't know about yet. And the only reason that this particular element particle can do what it does has to be that there's something else that we never even considered. And now we got to go figure out what that is. And that turns out to be 1,000 times smaller than this thing. And it never ends. And so there is nothing in this world that is truly physical. I saw something one day, probably 2 years ago now. Somebody had asked a question on, I think it was on Quora.com, and it said, if you took all of the physical particles of all of the human beings on Earth, and you jammed them all together, and there was no space, how big would it be? How much would it weigh? And somebody with a propeller growing out of his head did the math, and they said that it would be infinitely heavy. It would just go straight to the center, at the core of the Earth, but it would be a cube, a little bigger than a sugar cube. And I read that and I thought, I think he's wrong. I don't think you'd even be able to make a cube out of it, because it doesn't really exist. So that there's a phrase that's really common in all the sort of, what used to be called New Age circles. It's like, you're not a human being. You're a physical being, an energetic being having a physical experience. And I think that's true. And so my podcast is a long way around answering your question, but my podcast is called The Universe Between Your Ears. And it really comes out of this idea that your universe is what you create it to be. Because you are nothing but energy. So all of your experiences are just things that you have created, in your mind, whatever that truly is. And so it's the universe is between your ears. What do you want to experience? That you have the ability to experience anything you want to experience. We just don't. We have these beliefs and things that we can't. You could wake up tomorrow morning and be the Queen of England if you wanted to be, but you don't believe it. So anyway, friend and I, he and his wife were running an Abraham Hicks meetup, and we would get into these discussions there, and sometimes it would start to get really good and juicy, and the problem is that the Abraham Hicks material, if you're familiar, is really this kind of surface material. These discussions we would get into, we're starting to dig deep, and then inevitably somebody in the group would kind of get nervous about it and say, can we go back to Abraham? And so we left more than one of these sessions just feeling a little frustrated. And I finally had the light bulb come on, and I turned to him. I said, you want to do a podcast? Because we can just have these conversations, and nothing else. We can talk about whatever we want for as long as we want to who we want. And so he said, yeah, let's do it. And so that's what we did. So we spent a year talking with amazing people who, for the most part, nobody's ever heard of, but people with amazing lessons to teach and experiences and from all walks of life. And it just was an amazing growth experience. I learned really it's to step up and drive the bus. And it was great. And so we had a lot of fun doing it, and we had conversations. Very few of them lasted less than an hour. Because we get into stuff like this, you get into stuff that's just, there's so many layers and so many directions you can go, and ours was unscripted also, and so somebody would say something that was interesting, and we'd take a turn, and we'd shoot off and chase that idea for a while. And so it just was really, really fun. And we took a hiatus at the end of the year, one, because we had enough recorded that would take us through the end of the year, and the holidays were coming, and since then, we just haven't had the ability to coordinate schedules again so that we could go back and start it up. But it's called The Universe Between Your Ears, and I don't know, that's that. It may be a 1 year, there's 52 episodes. That may be all we ever do, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh, so what is your new podcast about, if you want to talk about that?
The new one is going to be about personal growth,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a slightly different format. It's just me, and I'll have guests, but it's going to be a different sort of presentation than the other one. The other one was just we all sat down and have a conversation, and it lasted until it died. But this one is going to be a little more structured, and it's going to be there will be a lot less of the getting to know you stuff, and a lot more of here's a very sort of constrained topic. Let's dig deep on this.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about personal growth and let's go into the personal questions I have for you.
Oh, look at the time. I got to go.
No, you don't get off that easy. Okay. Who or what motivates you?
The answer, I'm afraid the answer to a lot of these things is going to start with it depends. I am less motivated by money than I am by making a difference somehow. I'm less motivated by production of something than I am enjoying what I'm doing. It's really, the older I get, the more it just becomes about, am I going to enjoy doing this, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. What demotivates you?
probably would be fair to say that, like, quotas. You got this job and you gotta meet these deadlines, and if they're realistic, it's one thing. If they're just designed to push you and grind you into dust, and that's going to demotivate the heck out of me. Having to deal with people who don't want to hear what other people have to say, that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. When was a time that something was said or done to hurt you, but it worked out for your good?
That's really tough. I tend to just not hold on to stuff consciously. So honestly, I'm having a little difficulty digging something like that up.
Okay.
Maybe we can try coming back to that and see if something comes around.
Okay. What is your fear? When I was a kid, we were really poor, and money for a very long time was always an issue. So it kind of depends on how you define the word fear, but not being able to pay bills Mm-hmm.
is incredibly stressful. During that time frame when I was out of work, I paid for a lot of things on credit cards,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things, and it takes years to get that back, to pay it all off. So I'm still working on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a time when you wish you had done something that you didn't?
Yes. There's probably more than one. The first thing that pops into my head is old. When I was probably a sophomore in high school, was around 16. Somebody in our group was at least 16 because we were driving. It was August. I love football, and I was fast and had good hands, and I could have been a receiver or a running back or something. And there were 3 or 4 of us that we heard that high school football practice had started, or, they're getting ready to do tryouts or whatever. And so we drove up to the school, and we turned in. They had a parking lot that faced the end zone, and we pulled up there, and it was probably 85 degrees in Chicago, and so the humidity was 90% or whatever. And we sat there for a few minutes and watched these guys in full pads doing these drills, and they weren't out playing football. They were doing these sort of sideways leapfrog things, and you jump sideways over somebody and roll and back and front, and sprints and all. And we kind of all, as I remember it, we all just sort of looked at each other and just were like, no, let's not. But that, I wish I had done it. I wish I had done it, because that would have been good for me.
Okay.
But, today, people are much bigger, and I'd have been just snapped like a twig. But back then, they were more my size, and I could have competed.
Okay. Is there a time that you wish you had not done something?
Yeah. It was really stupid. The first thing that comes to my mind. Girlfriend and I were moving into an apartment, and we had moved a few things in, and a friend of ours was helping us, and she wasn't there. I don't remember the whole scenario, but she wasn't there. But one of the upstairs neighbors had left, and it's just a small building. There were probably, 4 to 6 apartments there. And so it was owned by a single person. And somebody had left a new vacuum cleaner in a box in the stairway. And I let my friend talk me into taking the thing. We took it into our apartment, stuck it into a closet, and of course the person called the landlord, and well, who would do this? Everybody else is already established here. Let's take a look in here. And they found it, and we never got to move in. Yeah, I wish I'd never done that. It was really stupid. We didn't truly need it. But there you are.
Okay. What is your definition of success?
Okay, that's another it depends thing. Depends on, what area of life. Maybe if there's a general, it's going to be something along the lines of feeling good about whatever it is that I've done, not being stressed more than you truly need to be, and able to pay the bills without struggle. I don't need to be a super millionaire. I just need to have enough money coming in that I don't have to worry about paying my bills, and I can feel like I'm living pretty well.
Okay.
So success would be being in a position where it's easy to be happy.
Okay. How do you recharge?
I'm mostly an introvert, so I don't need to be out and doing parties and things much. If I go to a party, I'm happy to be standing, in the corner of the room just watching people. I get one of the big recharges is to have conversations like this where, you can explore new ideas and things with somebody and bounce stuff off. And instead of somebody going, "Oh, that's stupid. What are you thinking about that kind of crap for?" They go, "Oh, wow, never thought of that. What about this?" And you can you come away from that stuff, or conversations where people are respectful, but they're passionate about different perspectives on the same idea, and so you can have these energetic arguments, but you're still friends when you're done. Yeah.
Okay. What are you awesome at?
What am I awesome at? I don't know. I'm pretty good at dealing with people, and I'm doing support work, IT work for a long time, and one of the things that I've learned there is that people are less concerned about whether or not you're able to fix their problem in the moment than they are about whether or not you give a damn. Because not everything you run into is something you're going to be able to fix right then and there. But if they feel like when you tell them, I don't know, but let me find out and, we'll get it fixed, they are far more likely to say, "Okay, appreciate it, thank you," than they are if you say, "Oh, well, let's just try something," and, or if you blow smoke at somebody. So I'm pretty good at calming people down and helping them to I don't know, I suppose just to feel a little better. I don't know. That's a tough question. I'll have to put some more thought into what I'm awesome at and then get back to you.
Okay. What legacy do you want to leave?
It's that change in the world thing. If I can feel like I've done some work of some kind that people see value in, then I think I'll be happy. I really don't care whether my name lives on in lights or anything, but if I can feel like I've made a difference for a few people, a significant difference, then I think I'll be happy.
Okay, well, those were great. Tim, give the listeners one motivational takeaway.
Well, we kind of already said the primary thing. Well, let's go here. You can change your life no matter who you are, where you are, what your circumstances are, you can change your life. There are people doing it every single day from the worst of circumstances. And it just takes paying attention to the things you think about and the things that you take in, whether you're watching television or talking to people or reading or whatever, and put a little bit of mental effort into trying to think of things that are less, I'm not even going to say think happy thoughts, just think of things that are less ugly. And you will see your life change.
Great. Tim, tell the listeners how they can connect with you on your social media platforms.
The best thing is just go to timcstar.com, stars with one R. And from there, you can, that's the easiest thing. Just start there and you can go out from that. There's links to the podcast and things there. So.
Okay. Well, Tim, we're done, but I think I know we could have gone on forever. Oh my goodness. But thank you for just taking time out of your day to speak with me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
If you like Trina Talk, please don't forget to go out to Apple Podcasts to rate and review. I want to hear from you. So if you're loving it, please let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any suggestions and how I can better serve you to give you that motivation and inspiration that you need. Also, who else in your life do you know that needs motivation and inspiration? Share the podcast with them as well. I hope you have a great week. And remember, if you change your mindset, you can change your life. Keep striving because success is a journey, not a destination. You can listen to Trina Talk anytime and anywhere. It's available on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spotify, and all other places that you can listen to podcasts. If you like the podcast, please don't forget to go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, review, and share. If you have questions for me or need inspiration on how to go to the next level, tweet me directly at Trina L. Martin.